A waiter slammed the glass across the table, drenching him in cold water. Shocked eyes stared, hearts raced. But this wasn't just a random act of anger. It was a calculated insult, fueled by something deeper, something darker. Around him, people laughed, unaware of the humiliation, unaware of the quiet fury building. But he wasn't just anyone. This man owned the very restaurant where the insult took place. How could one act of hate collide with the power he held? And what would happen when dignity and justice finally demanded a reckoning? It was a busy Friday evening, and the restaurant buzzed with life, clinking glasses, soft laughter, and the murmur of conversation filling the elegant space. He arrived with his wife and little son, their hands intertwined, smiling as they settled into a cozy corner table. To the other diners, he looked like any ordinary father enjoying a family dinner. No one could have guessed that this man, calm and composed, wasn't just another guest. He owned the very restaurant where they were seated. As a waiter approached, something in the air shifted, a subtle tension that hinted at the humiliation and injustice about to unfold before his family's eyes. The waiter approached the table, tray in hand, his expression tight and purposeful, eyes scanning the small family as if measuring them, judging them. He placed a menu in front of the man, but it wasn't offered politely. He thrust it forward, a subtle shove that drew stares from nearby diners. The man smiled politely, ignoring the rude gesture, hoping the evening could remain calm for his wife and son. But the tension didn't ease. The waiter lingered too long, his gaze lingering on the man with a sharpness that felt like it could cut through glass. He poured water, not gently, but with a careless flick, and the liquid spilled across the table, soaking the tablecloth and dripping onto the man's hands. Gasps rose from nearby diners. His wife's eyes widened, her hand instinctively reaching to shield their son from the humiliation. The child looked up, confusion etched on his small face, his tiny fingers clutching his mother's arm. The man remained seated, but inside, anger and disbelief battled for control. He had seen prejudice before, but never this brazen, never so openly displayed in front of his family. Around him, the waiter laughed softly, a mocking, cruel sound that echoed louder than the clatter of dishes. Other customers glanced at the scene, some uncomfortable, others pretending not to notice. The room felt suddenly smaller, heavier, the air charged with unspoken hostility. Every fiber of his being told him this was wrong, that dignity demanded a response. But he hesitated. The family around him depended on his calm. The boy's eyes, wide and innocent, reminded him that any outburst could scare his child and escalate the situation further. The waiter, sensing his hesitation, leaned closer, a smirk curling across his face, a silent taunt that challenged him to react. Time seemed to stretch. Each second dragged as the humiliation built, each glance from the waiter punctuating the injustice. The man's heart pounded, a storm of fury and restraint swirling inside. He could feel the weight of history pressing down, the familiar sting of discrimination cutting deeper because it came here, now, in what should have been a safe, joyful evening. Then came the final, subtle insult. The waiter's words, delivered under his breath yet loud enough to carry, dripped with condescension. Nearby diners pretended not to hear, their heads tilted politely, eyes averted, complicit in the silence. The man's jaw tightened, and he realized that this wasn't just about one spilled glass. It was about a system of disrespect, a microcosm of a larger injustice playing out before his family. As he sat there, soaked but resolute, the waiter turned to attend another table, leaving a trail of subtle disdain in his wake. The man's mind raced. He could remain silent, allow the moment to pass, or he could act. But if he acted, it would be a quiet, deliberate force, not chaos. He would not let his child witness vengeance, only dignity reclaiming its space. What he did next would change everything in the restaurant. And the lessons his son carried home that night would echo far beyond these walls. The waiter returned, a tray in hand, but this time his gaze carried something sharper, almost predatory. Without warning, he slammed the glass down on the table, sending water splashing onto the man's lap. Laughter erupted from a nearby table, cruel and oblivious, but the man didn't flinch. He looked at his wife and son, their faces a mix of shock and fear, and felt a surge of protective fury. This wasn't just a minor insult, it was a challenge, a blatant act of disrespect. And it was happening in front of his family. He could have reacted in anger, could have yelled, could have made a scene, but he didn't. Instead, he sat straighter, letting the water drip, letting the humiliation settle. Around him, the room seemed to hold its breath, diners glancing nervously between him and the waiter, sensing that something was about to shift. The waiter, emboldened, leaned closer, mocking him silently with a smirk that dared him to respond. And then it happened. With a calmness that belied the storm inside, the man spoke, not with rage, but with a quiet authority that filled the room. Every word was deliberate, every gesture measured. Slowly, the staff and diners realized this was the owner. The very man they had treated as just another customer, the man they had underestimated, dismissed, humiliated, held the power in this place. The waiter froze, the smirk fading, replaced by disbelief and panic. The laughter around the room died, replaced by stunned silence. In that moment, everything shifted. The power dynamic inverted in an instant, and the humiliation, once directed at him, now belonged entirely to the one who had tried to demean him. His wife's hand tightened around his, their son's eyes wide but safe, and the room's energy crackled with a new understanding. Respect could not be taken lightly, and dignity once claimed was unshakable. The waiter's gaze met his, an unspoken question lingering in the air. How far would he go now? And what would justice look like in this room? The waiter stood frozen, eyes darting nervously as the room slowly regained its normal rhythm. The man, still seated with his family, remained composed, his calmness a quiet but undeniable force. The humiliation he had endured was real, but in that moment, it transformed into a powerful lesson for the waiter, the diners, and anyone who might witness it. His wife gently squeezed his hand, their son looked up with a mixture of awe and relief, and together they finished their meal with dignity intact. But the impact went far beyond the table. The incident lingered in the air, a reminder that racism often hides in casual gestures, in moments that seem small but cut deep. It exposed the truth that power and respect are not given. They are earned, defended, and reclaimed. And sometimes the simplest acts of quiet authority can speak louder than any confrontation. As they left the restaurant, the man reflected on the duality of that night, the sting of injustice and the resilience of standing firm. It was a moment that would stay with him, a story he would share not just as a personal experience, but as a reflection of a larger reality, a reality millions face every day, silently or visibly, in places they should feel safe. The question remained, echoing long after the evening ended. How often do we overlook the quiet dignity of those around us, dismissing their presence, their worth, until it forces a reckoning? And how many times must courage quietly confront injustice before change truly begins? That night, dignity reclaimed its place, and with it, a reminder: respect is never optional, and silence in the face of hatred is never innocent.